Are you really living your life? What if we took death seriously?
I actually really like this one.
Really?
I do, and here's why. I've had an unusual attraction to death and the idea of death since I was a child.
Welcome to the Gyst Life podcast. It is our hope that the gritty, real, and uncensored insights we share with you here will help you get your shit together as you explore and discover what it takes to live your best life on your terms.
I'm excited to introduce you guys. This is a totally different dynamic for me. This is awesome. So, sitting at the battle station.
Yeah, what's different about that? You normally you're front and center.
Yeah, man. It's just, it's good. I just get to be a spectator. I get to see what's getting created, what we created over the course of, what have we been doing this for like the last 6 months together?
Well, together.
Something like that.
What, 2 years?
Mm-hmm. 3 years, yeah, ish.
3.
We're coming into our 4th year.
Impressive. Longer than most marriages. Love it.
That's facts.
So this is episode 84 of the Gyst Life podcast, and man, I'm excited for the momentum that we're creating here, and I get to introduce my boy Al and Devin.
Was good?
What's your last name?
Good. I like it.
When you say it, I'm gonna know it. But what is your last name?
Jones.
Devin Jones, of course.
Yes. This is the simplest name. Next to Smith.
Yeah.
Devin Smith.
Yes.
Yeah, man. It's all good. I got nothing to say. I'm just gonna let you guys let it rip. I just want everybody to know that this is just some as-lived, from actual experience, real shit that you're about to hear. That's what this is all about, man. Is like we're coming together to share our actual life experiences and what we've gotten from doing this work, from taking life on. So I'm excited to hear what you guys have to share, and I just get to be a spectator on it.
Wow, well said. Yeah, well said.
So natural. I feel like I'm reading a script or something, and everybody's judging me, and I don't get it right.
Hey,
Devin, that's the reality of it.
No, I'm judging him too.
I want to free you of that burden. I know you're half joking, but I want to free you of that burden. Everybody is judging you.
Yeah.
So just be okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just
for
accept
some reason, that makes me a little bit more nervous. Yeah. Actually, that's how you phrase that, right? Yeah. So the topic that we chose, I guess this time, was the topic of if I were to drum it down to one word, death. But in a very specific way, like not only just our awareness of death, but if we got visceral with it in the sense of just really understanding that death is a real thing, not as when I was like 18 or so and you hear the word death, you're just like, yeah, but that's kind of like for
kind of removed from the idea.
Yeah, you're kind of removed from that. Oh, that's for old people. And I'm gonna be about
old people and accidents. That won't happen.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that's gonna happen maybe within 100 years in my life, and then maybe I'll start thinking about it. But I came back from a meditation, Vipassana, and one of the things that was realized is the arising of life and the passing of that life into death, and that got me really thinking about like how things are not, of course, permanent. And if we were ingrained with that belief when we were younger, how would we live our life differently? And would we live our lives differently? I assert that we would, because you start to see, especially like I'm 47, and I got to tell you, hearing that, because in these discourses, so you, as I was saying earlier, you meditate for 12 hours, and then there's these discourses, and you have this Indian guy with his Indian accent just talking about things, and it just sounds more enlightened when you're in that environment, and him just talking about things like the sankaras in your body and just letting go of the permanence of sometimes what we think we have in life, right?
Yeah.
And that things do come and pass, and just being in contact or just recognizing that helps free your mind, helps free the attachments to how you think things should go. So it just really got me thinking. So when Dave asked and said, like, what should we talk about? It's been really on my mind, because I've had this fear before I went up. I had this fear of, I don't want to say death, but the fact that I am dying. I'm living, but I am dying. It's a weird thing to be 47 and think you're still like 18, maybe 20 at my latest. have that mentality, and then look in the mirror and see grays coming in.
Right.
Seeing grays on your, dare I say it, on your balls, and you're just like, what the fuck is this? It's not Christmas. Where's this frost coming from? No, like,
There's
I know,
a disconnect between.
It's a disconnect, and I'm going like,
how
what I
you
started
feel and what you look like.
Yeah, and what I realized, the disconnect and the attachment that I had, whether I realized it or not, is I had this attachment to me still being young-minded and disconnected with the fact that I am dying. Right? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but like, it is happening.
My mom said something to me the other day, and at first I didn't understand it, and it later jarred me to a realization, and I'll share it with you and see where it lands for you. She said, I am in the fall of my life. As in the season. And I went... At first, I was like, that's kind of something. I don't know what that means. But then you're like, oh, fuck, winter comes after fall. And then after winter, it's the end of the year. And so it puts it in a more tangible time frame. And to me, it was like, shit, I'm going to lose my parents at some point in my life. Which I haven't experienced. They have experienced. But, like, seeing now her... Seeing that is like, oh shit, Mom, don't be scared, like, you're fucking freaking me out. You're supposed to be the one who's got this shit together. I do not have my shit together. That was not something that I was prepared to kind of hear or understand. I mean, how does that hit you?
Yeah, man, it hits me very viscerally. Like, you know, what flashed in my mind is seeing, like, my hero, my dad, looking like the strong bull, you know, when I was younger, this guy I looked up to, and now I see this old gray man, and just to hear him speak, I'm just like, how the fuck did this happen? You know, like,
it's inevitable, no?
And that's the thing. We were talking about this earlier before we started, about how we hear things and there's like a disconnect. Of course, logically I understood that. Yeah, I know it's not going to last forever and whatnot. This is going to happen. But to have it in your face and be like, no, this is happening.
It's not a going to, it's been happening.
Yeah, and it's been happening. Yeah. And then, of course, what I go to is like, how are you living your life? How would you be living life? How is that going to transform you living life? So things just got more real, if that's such a, you know, it's gritty, real, and uncensored. It really is. It really is. Those are not just words for me. So it really took being, and it's such a nebulous term to just say, like, to be here in the here and now, because what does that really mean, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of those things, what that really means is having these kind of conversations,
right? And
then not only just having these conversations, but taking the next step to make a difference in your life, where you are living a purposeful life. So what got clear for me is, I, for a large portion of my life, thought things were just going to show up and happen.
I relate to that very deeply.
Yeah.
I'm out here, I'm working, I'm doing this shit, like, when is that magic moment going to occur when everything's all of a sudden the way it was supposed to be, as I perceived when I was young?
Yeah.
Right?
So the here and now is recognizing that. Okay, I do recognize that. And then you also I get at least privy to life, and it's like, this is how it actually works. This is the physics of it. We were talking about it a little bit earlier, once again, before we started, that I believe this theory that we don't live to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training. And you actually, if you don't mind saying, Mr. Commander at the battleship, there's some things that you said about that I thought was really real. Like when we had a comparison about being in a sport, let's say boxing, and there's always this illusion, if you've never done boxing or any physical sports that requires pain while you're doing it, or you're going to discover pain while you're doing it, there's sometimes this idea of just like, when you're training, that everything is going to go swimmingly. You know, I'm going to knock this mofo out when I get in like this. I'm going to give her right or left. And what did you say, what Tyson said?
Oh, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth.
And then you said, that's what life is like.
That's
all of life.
Like all
that
of
is
life.
life.
Yeah.
You come and you think this is how things are gonna go, and then you get bitch slapped sometimes front and back, and dare I say it, sometimes a kick in your balls, sometimes a few times, and then we see what you're really like. That is what I mean by being present, where you're just like, now you're awake. Here's the reality. How are you gonna train for it? You know, and sometimes people have a negative connotation of what training is, but I believe now that what I saw when I talk about death is death brings that realization. Is like, how are you going to live your life now? How are you going to train for it? Are you going to be at the steering wheel of your vehicle, or are you still going to sit there and think that I'm going to be famous and it's just going to come to me? That because, you know, when I was younger, I wanted to be Boys to Men and whatnot. And it's just gonna
The dream.
I feel it. It's just going to arrive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's powerful to have that type of dream. It is what inspires us to keep moving forward, but it requires action. We have to do stuff.
And not just any action.
Yeah.
Because we can make ourselves busy and make it look like we're approaching whatever that thing is. But
why it hasn't happened.
yeah, if you're not doing the right actions, and I've worked with a lot of musicians in the same sense, where they're like, well, I'm recording music and I'm putting it on SoundCloud. Why am I not rich like all the other SoundCloud rappers? And it's like, well, you're missing the other 90% of this.
Here, now, and talking about it, there's a gift to receive from that, from that message. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, entirely. Some people get that gift at various points in their life. Do you know what I mean? Some people are naive to the idea that they or the people that they love can and will die. Yeah. And then when it happens, they're surprised by it. And now I'm not saying death is not surprising in and of itself. The nature of it is unpredictable, but the reason why I'm kind of leaning into that is because when I was a kid, we lived in the city for a while, but my parents didn't want us to fall into the riffraff and all that shit, so they did what they thought was the most responsible thing, which was to move us out to a farm and isolate us from all that. So from a young age, I don't know, I was maybe like 8 or 9 when we finally made it out to the farm, and it transitioned into new schools, and so I'm young and hopeful, and the world is still this magical Disney place, you know, everything's fantastic, but my first year in I think it was middle school, so this was grade 6, kids started driving in grade 8 and grade 9, so there was a middle school and a high school, and they were right next to each other, so our buses all kind of transcended to this central location from all the farms all the way around. And this one morning, we were coming across the highway, where we always cross the highway, and a bus had gone out before it should have, and a car had crashed into the bus, doing an excessive rate of speed, took the whole top end of the car off because it hit the bottom part of the bus, and so here's this, we show up now, grade 6, I don't know how old, young and impressionable, this entire busload of children now, witnessing the aftermath of this horrific crash, me being one of those people. So now I am jolted into this realization of what death actually is, while I'm sitting there watching a headless man body gasping for life. So it's really, really graphic, and it was really fucked up for me at the time. But I became very present to the idea that everybody dies. So from that moment, that's when I began my intimate relationship with what death meant. And it was very shortly after that we had Thanksgiving. And I was a mess. The counselors we've talked about this, you know, teachers and their disconnect with their students. And every human being has their own shit going on. But I was a child and I didn't realize that. So I'm trusting these people to handle this problem. And they're not. And so I'm left to navigate these waters myself. And so from that point on, I was like, life literally has no meaning. Every day you wake up and you're going to die some point in time, and I'm going to do all this shit and I'm going to die, and it's not going to matter, and nobody's going to give a fuck about it. Nobody gave a fuck about that kid. Mind you, I didn't know his life. I don't know his family or his whatever else, but I adapted this belief that life is meaningless and we're just a bunch of fucking meat suits. Now it's weird because I feel like I'm like this infinite power trapped inside a meat suit. So I don't know if that's a relatable experience for anybody, but I was connected to it in that, period of my life, that era of me learning and understanding what death actually meant.
Yeah.
And so I've carried that with me. Now I've had my own personal ups and downs because you have relationships with human beings, and inside of those relationships you realize every human being is so selfish. And they only ever think about what they need in life. And that's the human condition. And if you don't acknowledge that that's the human condition, you will become a victim of it as well. And so here I am in these empty relationships knowing like, you're just using me to get what you need. You're just using me to get what you need. You're just using me to get what you need. And I don't fucking matter. That's a hard pill to swallow. That's a jagged pill. Now I've become present to the other side of it, which is, it's not just that you're using me. It's like you actually, on some deep level, your human spirit needs another human spirit. So I can't fucking sit here all high and mighty and judge you for needing me, right? And the same goes with everybody that I've ever... But that was like a realization I had later on. And that's all stems from my intimate relationship with what death is. So I always felt like I was this like angel trapped in this body, and it created this weird complex for me. At sometimes I've battled with this God complex or whatever, like never feeling like I'm better than anybody, but feeling like I'm just more awake than other people are. And I hate to say it like that because of the whole like woke thing, but there's this weird connotation that comes in line with that. But having an experience like that opens your eyes. And that wasn't the first. There were several other experiences after that. One of the kids, the same highway, just a little bit further up, carload of kids, they got in a car accident, and the one guy was ejected out of the car and the car started on fire, and so he had to try and rescue all of his friends inside of his car, like screaming and dying on fire. And so like that was another experience. So we had like, this school was cursed with death. And that's not even, that's like one, and then like another guy got punched and like landed on his head wrong and fucking died right there in the field. Another guy was like walking home from a party and like froze to death in a field. Like this death was always there. It was just always present to me. So I've had this weird relationship with it now where I'm like a little bit older. I'm 33 and I'm like, I'm fucking terrified that my kid's gonna die or that my siblings are gonna die, because it happens, right? So every day I wake up with this like looming anxiousness of like, who's it gonna be? Because of this pattern of what I went through like as a child.
It's I really hear it. I hear your grapple with have I done everything that I can yet? Is it going to happen today? Like I really get the humanness of that.
Is this like that knot,
Yeah, bro. Yeah. And you have this insight in having seen it the way you've seen it, and it's the opportunity. Truly, right? I feel like you get that intellectually. You get that. That the opportunity is like, okay, so what do I do with what I have? And then you grapple with, it sounds like you grapple with, well, what if it happens today? And then you become so consumed by the possibility of death that, to your point, Al, you're not present. You're so consumed by what might happen.
You're locked in this cage.
You don't you can't even enjoy the life that you have right now, and so all you're doing is waiting for death.
Yeah. And that's a terrifying place to be living your life from.
It is a terrifying place.
And thankfully, I found the resources on my own to kind of help cope and deal with and manage the stresses associated with that. One of them being like Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. That book was really profound for me because it helped me even now in this situation. I remember when I first met everybody here, I was still that like, what the fuck, you know what I mean? Like I was still
you have lightened
person.
up a bit.
And it's crazy because like I'll find myself, I'm looking at your hand, and it's just so interesting to me to see your hand and the scar that you have there, and like so now I find myself like appreciating you, and not just like the idea of you, but like the tangibleness of you being in this room with me. And I'm like, I need to be grateful for that. You're here. I'm here. Be grateful for that. Because on the flip side is like, fuck, Al's gonna die one day, and then I'm gonna lose my friend, and then I'm gonna be fucking sad, and so now I'm sad. And so I get consumed by that idea. I just get roped into this pain.
What was it about the book, The Power of Now, that specifically heard or saw? Like, I know you could say it's the whole thing, but was there something that he specifically, that you read, that he said?
The idea that a lot of how we live our life is imagined.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's go back to your experience with the sabbatical that you were just on. When you get there, you the first hour of the silence or the meditation, and you'll probably tell the story a little bit better than me, but you were accepting of it, but then there was this moment where you're like, fuck, this is going to go on for a really long time.
Yeah.
And now in your head, you're imagining what that's going to look like. And you're playing it out, and it's over and over again. You're looping, you go, and then you get to the end. You're like satisfied a little bit, but then you're like, "Fuck, I'm still here. And it's only been 3 minutes."
Yeah.
And then it loops again, and then that's what I mean by the 90% of your reality is imagined. And so the magic of it is when you become like hyper present to the moment. And I learned that through meditation, because when I'm meditating, I'm thinking in my head of like all these thoughts. The thoughts arise, and then I'm like, you know what? This isn't the time for that, because right now I need quiet. And so I take a deep breath and I allow that thought to subside, and then I put my attention or my focus on something external, like the compressor in the fridge running, that in the background, right? Sometimes I'll hear the cars on the highway in the background. I'm like, oh, there's cars in the highway in the background, and I never fucking knew that. And not that that's something magical that you can experience, but what it does is it kind of gives you that chance to be like, okay, get off it. And I think that that's kind of the essence of what you're chasing inside of. Is it Vipassana?
Yeah, it's Vipassana.
So I think that might be the essence of what you're chasing, is like finding the tools or the practice of quieting your mind. Is that
it's like
resonating?
It's like being in a gym, going back to what we were talking about with Vern, about training your mind. It's like that wild beast that is, or the monkey brain.
Yeah.
Just running all over the place, and then you learning how to take that inner animal and training it. So now it becomes something that helps empower the things that you're doing in life or wanting to do in life. I like what Vern also said earlier when he talked about it's like you're on the shoulder of a giant, and you're learning how to, and I'm paraphrasing this, how to whisper to it. How to basically train your giant. Because the giant can do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to point to something that the theme of it is all inside of this. And Devin was talking about it earlier when he was talking about that gruesome scene with the crash and all that. I just think it's so fascinating. Like, there's actually proof and evidence in our life experience that we create our life, right? Because in that moment, you made a decision, and those decisions then impacted the way that you think, the way that you act, and the way that you feel. And that obviously impacts the results that you produce in life. And so it's just fascinating to see that, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. If you actually look back, you can go, oh yeah, this happened, and then I thought that, so I started acting this way, and then I wound up like this.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's like you just realize in that moment that actually I can shift that. I can train myself to shift the way that I be in the world, and then shift the way that my life goes.
Right.
The way that you present yourself, And it's to the lizard brain thing or that monkey brain thing, that actually is a real scientific thing. And I think it's called the reticular activating system. And so it's your default programming. Everywhere we go, we look, we hear, we smell, and we take in massive amounts of data and then process it in a blink of an eye. And inside of that, we're looking for two things. It's either going to bring us pleasure or pain. Something bad is going to happen or something good is going to happen. And if we don't get either one of those stimulus, we ignore. So this is why on TV they change the frame every 7 seconds, because your brain's like, we already saw that, and so now it's boring. Then they flip the screen to the next character in that dialogue.
It's so powerful what you're talking about right now, because we forget that this machine is running all the time. and we think that it just does what it does, and you have like no influence over it. And like what you're talking about, the RAS, for example, or reticular activating system, like I'm no fucking scientist, but I know that by certain practices, by the things that you read, that you think, that you act, that you feel, the people you hang out with, the meditations, all those things are you programming your brain. programming those tools and those mechanisms to look for certain things. So it's like, who said that? I think it was like way back in the day. I was listening to Zig Ziglar, and he was talking about how you begin to see things that were always there. You just never saw them before.
It's like when you buy a new car, and then all of a sudden you see everybody driving that same car. You're like, what the fuck? Did this all just happen overnight? Or it's like what you train yourself to see, and then that paints the way that you see the world. And so this is like people who are like playing the victim. It's not that they're playing. It's like they actually do believe they are a victim, and everywhere they go, people are out to get them.
Yeah.
And I've recently encountered that again in one of my business dealings. It was just like every transaction that ever occurred with this person was like, oh, you're trying to fuck me over. And it was like, that is not, like, we talked about it even. We talked about the thing that I'm doing right now, and then all of a sudden I'm doing it, and it's like you've changed your mind on what that, but it's like I can't. And here's it, you know, how the magic trick's done. So now it's not magic anymore. Now it's like, oh, I see that in that person, and so now I gotta be like, I have a responsibility now in everything that I do when I'm interacting with somebody. And in a weird way, it's like this power dynamic shifting, where before I felt like I was just kind of like at the mercy of the way the world operates. But like knowing now that everybody's kind of operating inside of that bubble, and you'll see it. You can walk around, you can see, you just look at people in their eyes, right? And you can see in their pupils, they're in this like zombie state. Everywhere they go, they're just like, you know, and they're stuck in their head, and they're thinking, and like, have you ever gone through the drive-thru and like nobody even says a fucking word to you the whole time you're there? You're like, what just happened? I got a coffee and I don't even remember talking to anybody. And it's because like even you in that moment were kind of like back inside you. It's a comfortable place to be. It's like inside those thoughts, but it's also very dangerous because like you in your situation, it was like you just become present to this idea, and it could possibly be an idea that you don't want or you don't like. And so now that idea loops over and over again. And let's just use this as an example. Depression and suicide. You get a little sad, and then you're like, what's the meaning of life? And then like, there's no meaning in life. I should just kill myself. And at first it's innocuous. There's no value or there's no weight behind it. But you dare open that loop one more time. It just goes a little bit deeper. You know what I mean? Like, and then before you know it, it's swinging wildly out of control, and there's nothing that you can do. One of my friends actually is in the hospital right now because of something like that. And watching him go through that spiral, and there's nothing you can fucking do. There's a point at which people have to kind of take responsibility for that for themselves and identify, like, fuck, I'm in the loop again. It's not even real. It's you imagining this loop. And if you just took 1 second to be like, look at Al's hand. What an interesting hand. What an interesting man. What kind of tales do you have to share?
Many.
What lessons, you know, the life that you have lived.
Yeah.
So actually, Al, unless you have something you want to share right there, I just love how Devin set that up. So I want to ask you. So everybody's heard, I think, in here that I had my best friend 4 or 5 years ago. He had he overdosed, and he got suffered a brain injury as a result, right? So now he's 100% dependent. And what I didn't realize is that he was heading down a dark path of alcoholism, and he was trapped inside of himself. You alluded to that earlier, Devin, of just, he's a powerful guy. He was young, he was healthy, and for whatever reason, he's totally free, and for whatever reason, he was completely stuck in life, stuck in this loop and whatever, trying to figure it out, trying to free himself. Never shared with anybody, always kept it inside. And then it was like he never trusted anyone. He didn't appreciate people. He didn't appreciate his parents. And I don't mean like he was a wicked, awful person or negative, but it was like when we would talk, it was the complaints about his parents rather than like who they were for him, how much they meant to him and how much they matter. And it's really interesting now that he's starting to get back some of his faculties and his memory, and he's 100% dependent. He's the type of guy that wouldn't put a blindfold on in a room full of his best friends. You know what I mean? The trust. Yeah. But now he has to completely surrender all. He has no choice. He surrendered all of that to other people and trusting people who can take care of him. And then you can see how much he loves and appreciates other people and his parents particularly. And now he's back home in New Brunswick, and he's like happier than a pig in shit, being completely paralyzed basically. But yet having people around him that he loves, and he's like happier than he ever was when he had all of his physical faculties. Really? So
fascinating.
The reason why I share that, and the question I have for you is, what can we do to tap into the the inevitable power of like right now, like actually taking on life, like would not to be the cliche, but it's like live life like you were dying. Like what can we do when we're perfectly healthy? Here's the opportunity when everything's going well to act like this is my last chance to like get it going. What can we do to snap that into action? Because we've all experienced it where we've seen some people, it might not have been death, but something really bad happened in their life or something traumatizing, and then they go, oh, stop drinking, or they stop this, or they stop that, or they start doing this thing. So what can we do without suffering that rock bottom trauma to just get it going?
That's a very, very, very good question. And I feel that all of us have a insight of what that answer is, especially because we're all up to it. So I'm going to start off by saying this one thing: training. You train for it. If you want to be going to the Olympics and get gold, silver, or bronze, or whatever you want to reach, you have to train for that. And the other thing is that I've been through, and I think you guys definitely, what you just shared, you've been through as well, is hitting that rock bottom and realize there's got to be something better than this. You know what I mean? And there is. So how do you structure yourself where the loop that you created that is disempowering to you, you stop that and then create another loop that becomes empowering to you? And I assert these are some of the things. I think it's kind of like a cake. If you're baking a delicious cake, it's not just one ingredient. It's not the flour, it's not just the sugar or the almond milk that you put into it, but it's all those ingredients that you put into that bowl and you start to bake. So here's how I went through it. Because I went, and I like how you said it, because I went through a state of being depressed and thinking, is it all worth it? Right? And that loop becoming darker. And what I started realizing, and I'll mention it out here, if anybody hasn't experienced or gone through the Landmark Forum, highly recommended. That transformed my life, started transforming my thinking, and broke that cycle of just like being stuck in my head and thinking, just like what you said with the gentleman that went back to New Brunswick, that I can't trust anybody, I can't trust life, and realizing that was me projecting that. Like thinking life owed me something. Yeah. And it really stopped the dialogue and said, no, you're the one that's creating that in your head. You're the one that's subscribed or created that script, that story, and now you're acting like it's real. I love the analogy they said once. It's like taking a map of, say, Calgary, because that's where we're from, and jumping on that map and thinking that you're actually in Calgary because you stepped on that map. And now you're acting like I'm in Calgary.
Yeah, and everybody's like, "What the fuck is this guy doing?"
Yeah. Right?
That's good.
But it's got to be like you have to get on that bike. You got to go to Calgary. Yeah. You got to be in the streets, and not just be a farmer for a week, but be there for some time. So what I would say, like, start transforming that, like the Power of Now. I read that book as well. I'm going to actually revisit that. And we covered it even at the beginning, starting to circulate people who are like-minded or who you want to be like-minded around you. It's key. That is so key. The environment actually does create who you are. And in fact, you could look at the evidence of that about like even the way that we speak and how we see things. Our dialect that we use is a testament to the environment that we're in. Right. That has helped formulated how we see things, like hey, A, Canadians, A, or, I'm sorry. When we use those terms, that's because of the environment that we're in. Environment is so key. Another book, Atomic Habits, powerful. Have you read that yet, by the way?
I have not.
Okay. No, highly, highly, highly important.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I have it on my list. It's my wish list in Audible. I'm going to get it, but
there's a never-ending list of books.
I keep adding to it. It seems I have more books than I have time to read.
And, there are books that, of course, I have on my list that I want to listen to. And then I'm going to encourage, I heard this from Darren Hardy, spending some time with something that you read. Like, don't just read it, but consume it.
So there's a trend going on here. You just said that, and I'm like, okay, I got to step in here for a second. Yeah. Because Devin was talking earlier about, like, wow, look at Al's hand. Right? And you're talking about, like, Darren Hardy. Like, don't just read it to get through it and get it done. It's like, spend some time with it. Be with it. Like, let it percolate, let it develop, right? And what a reason why I alluded to what Devin said was, it's actually really simple.
Right.
It's like, you got to slow down. You got to pay attention. You got to be open. You got to practice. You got to be fucking patient.
Yeah.
Like, people underestimate
all these buzzwords.
Yeah, buzzwords.
They actually fucking mean something, guys.
They're real. Yeah, they're actually things,
they
right?
They mean some shit. People the thing that word means.
Yeah, people use them buzzwordy in an inauthentic way because they're not actually being that thing. But when you're actually up to it, when you're being it, people underestimate what they can do in 10 years, and they vastly overestimate what they can do in 1 year.
Yeah.
Right? And then when things don't go good in 1 year, they go, fuck this, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Slowing down and just appreciating a person, appreciating their story, appreciating what you're hearing from someone, appreciating what you're reading, and then like connecting that to like actual action or like what you're creating out in the world, right? It's like, that's the game.
And you start to form those deeper, meaningful relationships with people that actually give you meaning in life.
Yeah.
And that's the trick right there, is that the reason why you think there's no meaning in life and people are so shallow is actually because that's a reflection of yourself. And you being super shallow, you obviously paint the world with your brush, so you think everybody else is super shallow and incapable of loving. And so there is no meaning. So it's first of all acknowledging there are a myriad of pieces in this recipe, but you have to accept that I am enough. As I am here, I am enough to do these things. I've been way outside of my element in a number of its situations inside of this group and inside of other groups that I've found after this group. And every time I had to stop myself and go, I am enough. I do belong here. I've worked for this and I've put myself here with an intention and with a purpose, and so I need to fulfill that purpose and recognize that in other people. So the mind is a fickle thing. It doesn't want you to be wrong. It won't let you be wrong about yourself. So here's what's crazy about this. Watch this. If I go, hey Al, do you consider yourself an open person?
Right, yeah.
If you say yes,
yeah.
Yes, I consider myself an open person. Now I'm going to ask you a very intimate question.
Yeah.
Something really intimate. And then you have no choice but to answer that question, or else you make yourself a fucking liar.
Yeah.
And your brain won't let you do that. So that's how you can begin to program yourself into these ideas, is realizing that when you start creating that space for that, you can move into that space and accept it. And here, this is the analogy that I was given, not dissimilar to the map thing, but it's like you're on this island, and there's an island that you see over there, and there's this water that you're going to have to swim across, and it could be shark infested, there could be alligators. You have no idea. You've never been in the water, because this island that you're on is comfortable. It's shitty. You're running out of food. The fucking mosquitoes are rampant. It sucks. But it's more comfortable than it is to swim through the shark infested waters to get to the other beautiful island. Now, this isn't the grass is green on the other side thing. Your island is shitty. Everything's falling apart. Nothing there is worth staying for, but you're there because it's comfortable. You have to fucking torch that island. You have to set ablaze,
burn the boats,
everything that's there, burn the boats, and then create a bigger discomfort in the place that you are in order to swim across the ocean. And there's so much depth just in that idea of like, something has to happen. There has to be some kind of catalyst. Now, to the John Lennon thing or whatever, the assassination thing, the catalyst for him was the smile. Right? That was enough. That was the spark that ignited the island that he was on, and he said, fuck it, I'm going to dive in and then swim across these waters to the other side.
I like that, because it doesn't have to be big. As the saying goes, big doors swing on small hinges. It can be something small that makes a difference, right?
And small things added up over time incrementally become something big.
You know, on the flip side of that, people think that, you know, they do things like, oh, it's no big deal. You spit on the ground, or you fucking don't kiss your wife goodbye, or whatever. It's the same situation. It's the compound effect, the butterfly effect. You keep behaving in that way over time, and the compounded result is going to show up, right?
Start looking at the little things you're doing and see how they add up to the big thing that is your life. And in that, you'll be able to craft a better version.
I want to thank you for listening. We really hope that what you're hearing is of value. If there is something that you are curious about, or you wanted to share, or you had a question around, or even some feedback, we want to hear from you guys. Say hi at thegyst.life on Instagram or on Facebook. And if you do like what you hear, go to iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher, wherever your flavor is, and leave us a review. Tell us what you think. Let us know how we did. We'd love to hear from you.